Bhutan stands as a beacon of hope and a model nation when it comes to proactive environmental conservation and governance, with a national mandate to maintain 60% of forest coverage throughout all times. Although Bhutan's environmental policies and conservation strategies are stringent, at the implementation level, it requires greater capacity building. The objective of the conservation law enforcement training is to build the capacity of rangers who work within the conservation sphere. Recognizing the rate of increasing poaching and logging in Bhutan, this curriculum is designed to strengthen the effectiveness of field rangers.
To address the gap that is being identified in the current curriculum offered by UWICER, our institutional partnership between the UWICER and Southern African Wildlife College has been established, and the models have been already developed.
Spread over a course of 5 weeks, the training is the first of its kind to comprehensively cover conservation law enforcement within a Bhutanese context.
Currently, we are organizing the training of trainers for conservation law enforcement here at the UWICER's campus, attended by the field rangers from various divisions and parks. And the main purpose of doing this is because in our earlier module, this part was not adequately addressed. We have a project with the WWF in collaboration with the South African Wildlife College to transform the rangers' curriculum.
The field of conservation is a very dynamic field. It's not static. It is always changing. Therefore, people on the field, they always require also to keep on upgrading, capacitating and developing themselves.
The topics covered in the first week include conservation values, ethics, morals, and the philosophy and principles of conservation. Students were familiarized with the concepts of human rights, the code of conduct for rangers, their roles as rangers, and equipped with basic skills to work in group settings while managing conflict and communicating effectively. Week 2 highlights Bhutan's conservation history and outlines the design of its protected areas network system. To build a strong background base where students were engaged in discussions that cover topics ranging from conservation law enforcement, international conventions, the practice of environmental and social safeguards, and national environmental conservation legislation.
We are mostly in the field where we get lost in touch with all those laws, policies. We have to keep in mind the rights and freedoms of all the people, not only the national but even the international loggers and poachers.
In week 3, wildlife and species monitoring and distribution were taught, where students were engaged in practical exercises to effectively conduct camera trappings, first aid orientation, navigation, usage and creation of maps. They were also familiarized with basic technology including SMART, Cyber Tracker and See More for law enforcement.
Working at an institute that provides education and capacity building services, I firmly feel that such kind of training should be held in every corner of the world.
With a focus on wildlife crime in Bhutan, Week 4 explains initiatives to combat forest offences and also discuss Bhutan's zero poaching strategy. Illegal wildlife trade and trafficking and its effect on wildlife resources were studied in light of international environmental law and its principles.
As a ranger, he protects all life forms, both animal and human. So in order for him to be able to de-escalate the situation before it becomes a life-threatening situation, he needs to be highly skilled and highly trained. He is able to not just protect himself, you understand, but also do his job more effectively, more safely and more sufficiently.
I have encountered many offense cases, and they have dealt with many cases involving smuggling of timber, smuggling of wildlife parts, and then in dealing with the cases, I have come across different types of application of laws in our country.
A holistic overview of procedures and protocols in place that can be used when processing a wildlife crime scene were taught. Gathering of the various types of evidence were discussed in detail. This module serves as an introduction to wildlife crime scene management and the proficient investigation of a crime scene. Wildlife forensics as a science was taught, discussed, and its investigative protocols explained and explored.
As a trainee or as a participant attending this conservation law enforcement training, I found the training so important who are pursuing the studies on forestry and environmental studies in terms of law enforcement in the field.
Court and legal aspects with special focus on the forestry regulations, prosecution processes, powers and liabilities of forest officers, cases that can or cannot be dealt with by the department, and reward provisions.
Particularly for the conservation law enforcement, there are certain set of skills required, and the current training is covering all those. So the current training is the training of trainers, and they will be replicating the skills and the knowledge that they gain from this training.
Moving forward, this institution, the WWICER, has created a platform that is meant to take forward and lead in developing newly trained and newly capacitated conservation law enforcement officers.